everybody, Debbie here from Craftywafty, and today we're going to make the Sent with Love envelope card. Now I'll be honest, I've been looking at these for quite a while and I've been thinking I really want to have a go, and it's a really good way of using up scraps but also any ephemera that you might have left over from a collection. Now this is ephemera that I've used from the 49er Market Kaleidoscope collection. So as you can see, I've packed a fair bit into there, and I've just gone round and put card and stuff on the back, and it's freestanding, which is lovely. And then obviously you've got a card that you can then write your message on if you're gifting this to somebody. So that's what we're going to be making today. Now inside there are two like struts, I suppose I've called them, for you to sort of help stick your bits and pieces onto as you build up your scene. Now this one I've done quite random. I've just got some flowers, I've got some birds and butterflies, I've got a little bit of the ephemera, just to sort of tie that in. But you can theme this whichever way you like. You could do it for Halloween, you could do it for Christmas, you could do it for a baby. Lots and lots of different options. And the beauty of this is that the whole structure of this is made out of one sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock. So that's what we're going to be making. Now I'm going to pop that to one side. Now I've actually before I forget, on this design I just did the V coming straight down when I was cutting, but on the one that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to do it so you have like a little bit that comes across, so it looks a bit more like an envelope. I was just sort of messing around and playing with this one, but you'll see when we come to do that. So first of all, I'm going to get my cutter and I'm going to get a sheet of 12 by 12. Now when we move forward, I will be showing you, because we're going to be making a template. Let me just get my template. This is what our template is going to look like, okay? And you've got a choice of two ways that you can actually decorate this. You can either make the whole thing out of patterned cardstock. I've gone for some ombre, okay, which will just colour the whole of the card, and then you haven't got to put your patterned paper on, which is what I've done on here. But what I'm going to do is show you how to make the template out of the ombre, and then I'm going to use this white one here to pattern paper, to put my patterned paper onto, to show you how I got the measurements and everything like that. So if you want what I call the cheats version, then do it out of patterned paper, then you haven't got to worry about cutting your patterned paper to fit, okay? But I wanted to show you both methods. But this one I'm going to show you how to make the template. Okay, so first of all we need to check that it's 12 inches, which it is perfect, because some paper pads, they come in just a little bit smaller, but that's absolutely fine. And I'm going to cut this at 8 inches wide. So I need to sort out really, because I've got the ombre bit down the bottom here and I want it sort of coming round and up the top, I'm going to cut it this way. So we're going to cut that at 8 inches. Hold on a moment, Deb. No, you want it that way. Which way do I want to cut it? No, I am right, 8 inches. I had to think for a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to cut that at 8 inches. Now don't throw this bit away, because you're going to need this bit. Now depending on what colour way I'm going to go, I've got my card here, so I think I'm going to cut out my little, what I call the sentiment card, which is 3 inches by 3 inches. So we're just going to cut out of here 3 inches by 3 inches. So that's my little sentiment card, so I can have that either way. So I'm going to put that to one side, okay? And then we're going to need the little strut bits that are going to go inside. So they are 6 inches in length, so we're just going to cut cut off that, the 6 inches. And what I've done there is I've cut this at 1 3/4. So I'm just going to cut the 1 3/4, and then that should leave me with roughly 2 1/4. Okay, and they're my 2 strut bits that I'm going to use on the inside. And as you can see, I've got 2 different widths, because one is going to be at the front and then the slightly taller one will be at the back. Okay, so they're my struts, so I'm just going to put them to one side, and then that leaves me with a little bit of card left over that if I wanted to, I could maybe cut out a tag and attach that as well. Okay, so let's just move this out the way and bring in the scoreboard. So I've got my 12-inch scoreboard. Okay, so what we're going to do is on the 12-inch side, we're going to put that on here. Now, depending on what I want, I think I'm going to go for the green on the inside and my pinks and blues on the outside. So I'm just going to tuck that on there, and we are going to score at 3 inches. So we're coming right the way down, and then we're going to score at 4 1/2. Okay, we're not going to score the rest, but we will mark that up with pencil so that we can see where our measurements and that are going to go. And then I'm going to turn it round, and we are going to score at 1 1/2 inches coming in all the way down, and then at 6 1/2 coming down, or 1 1/2 inches in on that side. And that is our scoring done for our main piece. Let's just bring back our struts, and we're going to score 1/2 inch on either end. So that's 1/2 inch, and this is 5 1/2, and then we're going to do the 1/2 inch and 5 1/2 on that one. Okay, and they're already done, and that is all our scoring and marking up done. Okay, right, so now what we need to do is mark in our pencil markings. Okay, so let me just grab my bigger ruler for this. And what we're going to do is that we want to put in a pencil line coming. So when we've got our 2 score lines, we've got our 3 inch, our 1 1/2 inch, or our 4 1/2 inch there. And what I want to do is, let's turn that around, make sure, because this has got an extra 1/2 inch thing on it, so I have to be careful which way I'm using it. No, I was right. Okay, and I want to come up at 7 1/2, so I'm just going to measure 7 1/2 like so. Okay, and I'm just going to put a pencil line going just lightly all the way along there. Okay, and then I want another one at 9 inches, and we're just going to line that up and just put that there like so. Okay, so I think I've ended up with a pink in the inside, but never mind, it doesn't matter. This is just to show you how I did the template. Okay, so now we've got our pencil marks in. So this bit here is we're going to come in and do our V, whereas this one we're going to come out and do the top part. Okay, but you'll see that it is evenly distributed all the way round. So you've got 3 inches, 3 inches, 1 1/2, 1 1/2, and then you've got the 3 inches in the middle. So if you wanted to change it round and that, then you can do that. Now, because I've done the fold on there, and I'm going to do the fold on the bubble, that means that the pink and purple is going to be on the inside, but I really would like to actually have that on the outside. So I am going to fold it against my bubble on this one, which means that this side I can use to put all my markings on. So the first marking that we're going to do is the front part of our our little envelope. So you want the end, not where we've drawn the pencils, but pencil lines, but you want the end where we've got the 2 score lines down. So this end first. So what we're going to do is that we're going to draw a line between the 2 score lines at 1.5 inches in from our edge. Okay, and then we want to come in at 4 inches, 1 2 3 4, and mark our center point. Okay, and there's our center point on that line. And then what we're going to do is where the center point is, we're then going to come 1/2 inch either side of that center point. Okay, and that is our little markers to draw in our diagonals. So we're going to come in and draw our diagonal down, and then we're going to turn that round and do that on the other side. Okay, now we're going to come up to the other end. So this is where we've got our pencil lines drawn in. So it's that final pencil line here, which was the 9-inch one, which is what we're going to need. And again, we're going to find our center point. So I'm just going to mark in, coming in at 4 inches, 1 2 3 4. Just put a little mark there. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw our line from that point down to where this score line. So here's the score line here on that first on that 9-inch pencil line that we drew. So we're just going to line that up, and I'm just going to draw that into that point, and then we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So where the score line and that pencil line meet, and then we're going to come up to that. Okay, and that is our pencil markings done. So we're going to cut out this bit, we're going to cut out this bit and that bit right the way along. Okay, we are also going to cut out this square here as well. Okay, so let's get that done. So you can do this with a ruler, or you can cut it with a pair of scissors. I'm just going to do it with a ruler, just so I get nice straight edges. Okay, so I'm going to come along here, and where I've got that pencil line, I'm just going to cut that out. So up to the score line and cut that piece. I'm going to come in and do that on the other side. Actually, let's just check that, make sure I've got that right in. There we go. And then I can come down and cut in on that 1.5 inch. So I'm using my ruler just as a guide, because sometimes your pencil, depending on how sharp your pencil is, will make a difference to your cutting. Okay, and we're just going to come in at 1.5, just line that up, and I'm coming down to, what is that, 7.5 inch pencil line. Okay, so all my pencil lines. Okay, and then I can just cut this now. So I'm just lining it up again at that point, and like so. Okay, and then we're just going to come around and do the same on the other side. Just line that up with those markings. Okay, and now I can come and cut out this bit at the bottom. So I'm just going to line up where those markings are. I'm going to come out and do one side, then I'm going to do the other side and then I'll come along that middle bit. Make sure I've got that lined up. There we go. And now I can come in at the 1.5 from that end, and I can just cut between the two. There we go. So that's done. Okay, so that's where we're at the moment. Actually, I could probably tidy that up a little bit. Yeah, I needed to come in just a fraction more. That's better. Okay. All right. And then what we're going to do is we now need to cut down where the 2 score lines are left on that 1.5 inch side, and the same as the other. We just need to cut in to those. Okay, so again, I'm just going to use my ruler, and so I get them nice and straight. So that's one, and I'll come in on the other one. Again, I'm only going up to where the score line is, so you end up with a couple of flaps here, and then we're going to do the same on the other side. And that's roughly 3 inches from there. Coming in at the 1.5 line, and again, so that will now be coming in on there at 4.5. Like so. Okay, now what we need to do is to create these 2 long ones here and these 2 shorter ones into tabs. So I'm going to come in with my ruler 1 inch, and I'm literally just going to cut off right down to that smaller section here. So you're still keeping this big one at the front, okay, and then we've got these 2 here, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm coming in at 1 inch, but all of this can be cut with scissors. You know, I'm just doing it with a ruler and a knife. Okay, so now we've got our tabs. Okay, I'm just going to move that out the way and bring in my scissors, and now I'm just going to do a little snip just to give them the tab shape, like so. And just turn it around and do that on the other side. There we go, like that. Okay, and that should be good. Right, so I'm just going to get rid of that, and then all I need to do then is just rub out my pencil markings before I fold up the box, etc. So because I've done this one with the ombre, I wouldn't necessarily decorate the outside of the box. I'll just leave it with the colours. Okay, just give that a bit of a rub like that. So yes, I was going to have that on the outside, and then we've got the tabs that come in, so we're just going to fold everything like so, and then we've got that fold there. Still got a couple of pencil marks on there, but that will go. Actually, I was going to, whichever way I'm going to do it, stick it together. But actually, I quite like the purple on the inside, so I think I'm going to stick with that. All right, and then the idea is that you will glue this tab to this one here, and then this tab will come in on the inside like so, and the same on the other side to create your envelope. Okay, now you can round off the top, okay, which I did with a corner rounder, but it's not quite as square as you might find, like if you've got an envelope. If you've got an envelope board, the angle is slightly wrong. Okay, so you could try and sort of tuck it in there and punch it. I just did mine with a corner rounder, but what I did is that when I put it in, because the angle is wrong, I didn't push it right in. I just literally come back a little bit just to get a little bit of a curve. See if I can do it, because again it doesn't quite fit, so we'll just come in and take the tip off like so, and it just gives me a little bit of a rounded edge like that. But or you could just cut it with a pair of scissors. But that is our basic box. Okay, so, and as you can see here, I've got the pattern, the ombre on the outside, but it could be any patterned paper, and you wouldn't necessarily need to decorate that. And then you've got your inside pieces, where the smaller one, you will fold your flaps one way, so that these will tuck in at the bottom when that's joined together there, and then the taller one will tuck at the back. Okay, so that's how I made my template. So let's bring in the one that I'm actually going to finish off in front of you. And as you can see here, I've rounded off my top, and I've got everything cut ready to go. So I've already cut the backing paper to go on the back of the box. Okay, and I'll show you how to cut it for the front, because it's exactly the same size. And I've already cut the flaps here, the paper here, and then what I'll do is I'll talk you through how I did this bit at the beginning. So let's just put that to one side. So I'm going to bring in my bigger board for the minute. So the paper for the back and the inside of your box is 4 3/4 by 7 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and I quite like this because it's got the nice sort of wood effect to it. So I'm going to turn it over and do all my markings and everything on the opposite side. So what did I do? I think I came up from the bottom edge at 4 3/8. So let me just get my slightly wider ruler. So that's 4 3/8 of an inch. Just going to line that up, and I'm going to draw that pencil. You probably can't see that. Let me do that in a red pen, and you'll be able to hopefully see that clearer. Okay, so there's my red marker coming up from there. Okay, so when I look at it on here, I know that that was my measurement for that. And now I'm going to need to find my center point. Now, because this is 4 3/4, my center point is 2 3/8 of an inch. So I'm coming in from one side, 1 2 3/8 of an inch. And I've just marked that on there. And now I'm just going to cut down either side. So we're just going to line those up. You could draw it in first. I'm just going to go and cut it. I just need to line up that's one side, and then I'm going to come and do the other side, making sure I get to that point at the top. Okay. All right, and that the tip of the thing is right where that is. So if I just put that on there, should have a matching almost a match in there, and you can see where I've just corner rounded that. So I'm just going to get that. I'm just going to take this off a little bit. Okay, and I think I went in and just rounded it with my scissors just a little bit more, just to give it a bit more of a... Okay, I think we are fairly good to go. Right, that will do. All right, so that is now the inside. Okay, so let's just test that and see how that's going to look. So that is going to sit in just nicely. And again, I've tried to give roughly 1/8 of an inch gap all the way round. Now you might find that you might need to, when you're putting this in, you might need to trim a little bit off depending on how your angles have gone. So before I do that, I can see that I've got quite a lot of gap on this side, but not a lot of gap on that side. But if I move it over or down a bit, then that's going to throw that out a little bit. What I want is to make sure, because this is the front of the card, that this edge here has got the same sort of distance. So what I am probably going to do is just take a little strip off of that side, just to try and help balance it a bit. But I think a lot of it will depend on your angle that you cut at the top. So don't panic if it is a little out. You can just trim off and do that. So I think now when I sit that on there, that is going to sit a little bit more central, and that looks a lot better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around and ink and faux stitch this. So let's just quickly ink it like so. You don't need to necessarily do this bit. I just like the fact that it finishes off the card. And I'm just going to faux stitch up and around and down. I don't need to do the base because you're not really going to see that. Once you've put everything in, it's going to hide that. So I'm just going to go along with this. Here we go. And get this done. Now I have done the other pieces. So we won't need to worry too much about those. You can obviously take your time doing this. But this is what I was saying about like if you're using patterned paper, you won't have to cut out your individual pieces to decorate it with. But what I would do is I would actually go in and faux stitch all round the edge anyway, just to sort of finish it off. Okay, so let's just come down this last one like so. Now the best thing to do is to decorate your box or your envelope box before you stick it together. Okay, so this is going to come in on here. So I'm just going to grab my glue and then we can stick this down. Right, got my glue. So I'm just going to put some glue in there. I'm just going to stick this on the inside like so. So I've got a roughly even fold on there. So that's the inside, and I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to put the outside on. Okay, I'm just going to stick that on. Plus, putting card on the back as well will help strengthen strengthen the card box. Oh, let's move that down a bit. I've gone a little bit over there. Let's bring that down a fraction. Okay, and if I was writing my message, I would do that, and that would stick on the back, and I would faux stitch round that, but I haven't done that as yet, so I'll do that in a moment. And then we've got the side panel, so I've given you the measurements for the side panels. These I've already gone in and inked and faux stitched, so I'm just going to stick these on like so. Okay, and I'm just going to do this one on that side. So I've just taken the theme of the paper from the back round to the front. Okay, so that, and then we've got that going on there as well. So let's just stick that down, give that an opportunity to glue down properly. Okay, so when we're coming to these bits here, we're going to do those in 2 sections. Okay, so I've already pre-cut these. So basically what I did is that I cut a rectangle which was 1 7/8, okay, by 2 1/2 inches, okay, and then I came in at the top, so not the, you know, on the 2 1/2 inch side. I've come in at 1 1/8 inches, okay, and I put a marker there, and then I've literally just drawn a line from one end to the other, and then cut that as the diagonal, so that that will fit in on my, I had it round the wrong way then, that will fit in on my envelope like so. Okay, and to make it easier, once I'd cut one and I was happy with how that was sitting and looking, I just traced round it. Okay, but I traced around it so that the paper was at the back to create the other side to do that. That's how I did it. Or you can go with the measurements and cut that, but you need to make sure that when you do your measurements for this, that you do them as opposites. Otherwise, if you do them the same, your paper's going to end up like that. So you need to make sure that you cut that like so. Okay, and then these bits will now glue on and stick on the front here. And again, I've tried to leave the white edge showing just to give it a little bit of detail. So let's get these stuck down. Okay, but all the measurements for cutting and the angles and everything I've given you on the cutting and scoring instructions. So we're just going to stick that down on there. I'm going to try and keep it in line with the sides, just so that that gives me a bit of a guide. And I need to make sure that this strip coming down here is even as well. Okay, and again we're going to do the same on the other side. But with any patterned papers, if you need to trim off a little bit, if it doesn't quite sit right, then obviously you can do that, because again it depends on your angles that you've cut your cardstock. So see, I can see now as I put that down, I've got my gap there, but on that side I've only got a small gap. So I may have, perhaps what I should have done was trim down a little bit, but I think I need to move that over just a fraction, because it needs to line up in line with the other one. So let's bring that down, bring that in a little bit so it's in line with this piece here. That sits a bit better. Okay, so do fiddle with your papers, and as I said, if you need to trim a little bit, then by all means do so. Okay, so we've got our bits coming down here, and now we just need the bit to come across the front. So this is this bit that I've cut, and I haven't completely finished it off because I wanted to see how that was going to sit over and above my envelope bit here. Now I've got that going straight along the bottom. So this piece was cut at, here we go, this was cut at 4 3/4 inches. I found my center point, and then from the center point I came out at 5/8 of an inch either side. So it's left me with basically 1 1/4 inches, that strip coming along the top there, and then again I cut down with the diagonals. Okay, so just trying to sort of even this up here. Probably not as much on the white showing there, but what I need to make sure is that the base is nice and straight. Looks like I'll get away with that. I don't have to do any trimming per se. So now I can do my inking, and I'll do my little faux stitching, and then that will look like the front of our envelope card. Now if you wanted to have the white showing, so where you've got the white coming around here, if you wanted to have white showing around there, then I would cut this bit that I've just done in white, and then I would make the patterned paper a little bit smaller so you get that white continuity going round. But to be honest, I think we're just going to stick with this. I'm just going all the way along there. Okay, and now I can glue this on like so, and I just need to line it up so it's lining up with the corners of those two pieces, and just making sure that's nice and straight along the bottom. And there we are, and that is our front of our envelope. So it's as I was saying earlier, it's a little bit different to the center point that I've come in here. What I did was I just extended, still came out at the 1 1/2, but the angle came down to that middle point and up, rather than us doing the strip bit across there. But I quite like the look of that. I think that gives it more of an envelope look to the front. Okay, so now we've decorated the outside and put our panel in, we now need to glue these together. Now you can either do this with glue, or you could put in a little bit of red liner tape. I'm going to use my bookbinding glue, so I'm going to do one side first. So I'm just going to add glue and come up and do the glue on that side. So that's going to, and these tabs need to come in on the inside, so that, and they will sit, and you're just going to create that box effect. So just give it a little bit of wiggle, make sure that's nice and straight at the bottom, bring that up at the top. That's it. Okay, get my hand in there and just hold that. Okay, so that's that one done. If you wanted to, you could cut out more panels to stick on the inside patterned paper, but because we're going to put the strips in and then we're going to decorate the inside, I've not bothered with that. So I'm just going to add the other bit of glue. Okay, and now I'm just going to bring that down, square that off. Make sure that's nice and straight along that edge. Get my hand in. And now I can just push that down. That's it. Like so. And that is our basis of our flower, of our envelope box done. Okay, now we've got our panels. Now you can go one of two ways with this. You could stick some of your main embellishment bits on here before you tuck this in, or you can put these in and then add your embellishment bits. Personally, I found it easier to stick these in first and then decorate, and trust me, a pair of tweezers is really helpful when you're decorating. So the wider piece of our strut, as I've called it, okay, will go to the back, and you've got these flaps here, so these are going to tuck in. I'll just show you before we glue it, and these are just going to tuck in at the back like so. And then this front one, these two flaps here, are going to go to the front, so you end up with it looking like that. And then that is your guide for you to stick your bits and pieces on to come out of your card. Okay, now you will notice that this one is a little bit taller than my original, and that was because when I first made this one, I made it out of an A4 sheet of paper, but obviously it didn't have the height for it. Okay, so you could, if you wanted to, do that, and you would do all your measurements that we did at the beginning. It would just mean that this bit here would come down a little bit lower. Okay, if you wanted to do it with A4 paper. So let's glue these in. Okay, so we're just going to add our glue to either side like so, and I'm just going to give that a little curve, drop that in, and I need to make sure that that sits right at the back and touches right at the back there. Okay, right, this is where I need my bone folder. There's my lovely Burnish. I put him down somewhere and now I can't find him. There he is. Okay, I'm just going to push that in and hold those sides down. So, like so. Okay. So that's the first one in, and now we just need to do the second one, which is going to come in the other way. So that's going to drop in that way and sit right at the front, and then you've got your stepping stones to build your scene. So we're just going to pop some glue on there. Okay, and again I'm just going to drop that in. So I'm just going to use that just to help. That's got caught on that flap there. There we go. Right. So these struts are touching the very bottom of the box. I'll just push that in. Okay, and that is our basic Sent with Love envelope card. And then literally it's just over to you guys in terms of your decoration and how you build that up. So I'm just going to pop that to one side, grab all my embellishment bits that I'm going to use, and then we'll decorate it. Right, so I've sorted out a few bits and pieces just to get me going, just to give you a little bit of an idea as to what you're going to do. So the paper range that I've used is the Summer Porch by 49 Market, and these are some of the bits and pieces. I mean, I had loads of bits and pieces of ephemera and stuff like that, but these are the pieces that I've sort of selected to sort of make a start on doing that, filling it in. So I've got a couple of the little cards here because I want to have a bit of height. So I'm going to put some of those in on the back one. I've got a frame which I'm going to sort of mount on sticky pads, which I just need to grab. So I've got my packet of sticky pads, which I'm going to use to mount that on. And then I've got a nice little message, "Life begins at the beach," which I'm sort of going to centre inside that, and again I'm going to put that up on there, so it just gives it a little bit of 3D. So let's make a start with that one first. And now I don't know about you, but when I'm working with my pads, I use the end bit as well, like when you've taken out your circles or your squares. So I tend to cut this up because at the end of the day it's still sticky, it's still going to work for what I need. So I'm just going to snip that off. I'm going to cut that in half, like that. So we've got the top and that, and then I'll just cut that bit in there. So I use every bit of my foam pads. Okay, so I'm just going to peel off this, and we're just going to stick this down. It's just to give it a little bit of a lift, like so. And I'm just going to peel off that bit. Well, that bit sit on there just, I think, yeah, that's going to get away with that. And then these bits on the side. So it's all about building up your picture of what you want to sort of put in here. Now on my original one I've used a lot of foliage and that, although this one I've got a few other things that I can use, but I am going to punch out of the patterned papers and stuff that I had left over to fill in here and there with some flowers and foliage and things like that. So we're just going to take off the rest of this. Oh, come on then. There we go. Sticking to my fingers. I'm just going to, and then you're just literally going to start building it up. So I start with the back and then I work my way forward. And then if I've got any gaps, I can fill in here and there. So it's just like a Polaroid. So it's got the deeper bit at the bottom. So I'm just going to lay this down. I'm just going to centre this as it comes in, like so. Make sure that is fairly square. And then my circle, that's going to sit in there, but I want that to come up even further. So I'm going to use a couple of actual pads that I've got. Let me just pull out, because I want to double it up. So I'm just going to use some of these. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple on there. 1, 2, I'll do 4, like that. And then I can take these off, and I'm going to add another 4 just to give that good dimension on the back. And then that also means that I can tuck other bits in behind it if I want to. So I'm just going to tuck those on there. So really doubling this up because I want that to pop out of that Polaroid. Right, okay, 1. Oh, Always a little bit fiddly. Get in the bin. There we go. 3 and 4. Okay, so just going to put them to one side. Right, so I've got my thing. So life begins at the beach. I have gone round and inked these, and I've also done some faux stitching on the frame. So I'm just going to tuck that in like so. I think that is fairly straight. That's it. Okay, so that's beginning to start with the back, but I can then tuck other bits in. Right, so for this bit, this is going to come in on this back page here, but I just want these poking out a little bit, and sometimes it's easier to tuck these in and glue these down before you put it in on that last one. So that one I want to cut, and I just want it to overlap, so I'm just going to have that stuck like that. So I'm just going to stick this down because I want it to look like it's overlapping on the other one. This was one of the little 3x4 cards that I had an element on it, so I wanted to use that. So I'll just cut a little slot where the stamp bit is, just to sort of help that. So that's going to sort of sit in. Right, just angle that out a little bit more, just so we get a bit of a gap at the back. So that's going to sort of tuck in like so. I'm just going to take that down just a little bit because I don't want it to cover up the life is a beach. So that's going to sit in like that, and then this one is going to sit in across the front. So let's get some glue on the bottom here, and this is where your tweezers come in handy. So just going to tuck that in, take that down just a little bit, so that's not quite. I'll just go along with my tweezers and give it a good squeeze to hold it in place. Okay, right, that's not quite sitting. There we go. Stick that. Let gravity help. There we go. Okay, so that is now, so that's just resting up like that, and then this one is going to come in and just sit across there like so. So you're just getting that lighthouse to pop out a little bit. So there we go. And we're just now going to add, so where the glue is going to come in, it's going to come down that side and along the bottom. And we're just going to tuck that in. There we go. So whatever angle you find easier to work with, then do that. Right, okay, we've got a little bit of bounce on that strut, so that's why I can push that down and hold that in place. Okay, so we've made a start. Now don't forget that you've actually got the back of the strut as well. I'm just sticking these in on the front, but you have got the back of the strut as well that you can tuck other bits in to give it a bit more dimension. Now I can see that I need to add a bit of glue in there because that is popping forward a little bit. Let's just hold that in situ. That's it. Okay. There we go, and I think this side needs a little bit of glue on there. Okay, I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of glue down there and hold that in. There we go. All right. I think we're there now. Right, so while that is drying off, at the front I've got a couple of words. So I've got beachy, pop those out so you can see the letters. So I've got two beaches. So I've got one which is just flat, or I've got one which is a little bit darker, which says beachy. So I could have that sort of stuck on the front, like coming down like that. And then I've got this other one that says vibes. So I could take, now don't be afraid to take it off the box a little bit. So I could put like beachy vibes if I wanted, or I could have that in the middle, beachy, and then have the vibes coming off the front, or not have any of that at all. And I've got some like coastal living, little phrase there, or I've got sandy shores. So I'm just trying to work out what I want to do, because in here I've got some boats and I've got some starfish. So let's just have a little look what I've got in here. I've got a little stamp, and I've got a couple of boats, and I've got a lighthouse. So I think the lighthouse might look good coming in on this side, because I want to sort of balance the red a little bit. So I might stick that in on there. And then I've got a tall boat which will help balance the other side. And then I've got something that might go in the middle, but I've also got a tag, but I don't think that tag's gonna work. So I think we'll go with our lighthouse, and I'm going to bring that over just a little bit so you get to see the captain's wheel of the boat as well. So they're just sticking in. Okay, now these are a little bit heavier, so we'll go with some glue. I might just have to hold this down for a little bit just to try that. So you just start building up what you're doing with whatever you've got to use. So I'm just going to hold that in situ. Actually, let's just grab one of my, I don't think they're going to fit on there. Oh, that is just holding that in place for the minute. Okay, so I've not gone right into the corner, I've just brought that in a little bit. And then my boat, I'm going to bring that in as well, because like I said, I might cut out some flowers and foliage with some of the patterned papers that I had left over to do some of my filling, as it were. Okay, so we've just got this tucking in like so. The boat, just hold that in situ. Just going to grab another one of my little clips just to hold that in place. So now you can see we're just starting to build that up a little bit, so I'll give them an opportunity to stay. So while they're drying, like I said, we'll come back to the front of the box. I quite like the sandy shore thingies, but these I might possibly put up the sides. I don't know yet. I've got a little heart, so I could put the beachy with a little heart, so that just comes in and underneath like so on the front there. And I've got a nice little stamp that I can sort of tuck in, so that just helps balance it off a little bit. So I've got beachy coastal living. You see, now that could tuck in underneath. So if I raise that beachy up a little bit, then that might work. Okay, so you get the idea. So you just sort of work with what you've got, fill in your gaps, okay, and then I can take that off now because that's stuck. and then we'll see what we've got when we finish. So I'll see you in a little while. And here we are. I've finally finished decorating my Send With Love envelope card. As you can see here, I've put beachy sandy shores. I quite like the coastal living, and actually I did have a thought you could punch a hole in the top and actually have it so you can hang it up as well if you wanted it as more of a keepsake rather than a birthday card type thing. So I wanted to give a little bit of height coming over here. So what I used actually was the strips of the paper, folded it in half. So I've just sort of tucked them in either side. So I was able to add a couple of the little flowers just to sort of go with it. Added a few gems. Here at the front, I've got a couple of boats. So it looks like as you're going through, you know, sort of them on the sea, and just sort of tucked in a few things with a couple of seagulls and stuff like that. But there we are. And then around the side, around the back, I just put a strip of the patterned paper I put on my sentiment card, and I just brought that patterned paper round the sides as well to finish it off. So there we go. And let's just bring in the original one. So as you can see, if you make it with A4 paper, obviously you're not going to get as much height as you would with the 12 by 12. But there we are. So I'm quite chuffed with those. And like I said, you can make these for any occasion, you know, whether it's birthday, Halloween, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day. Yeah, the list is endless, to be perfectly honest. Wedding, maybe, you know, and it really depends on what papers and stuff you've got, or any scraps of the ephemera and things like that that you want to use up. But there we are. So if you want to make this, if you haven't done so already, then download the cutting and scoring guide for this at craftywafty.co.uk. But I look forward to seeing you next time with another crafty project. So keep crafting, take care, see you soon. Bye.